Hey, public service announcement before we start this episode. We had some technical difficulties, until I get signed by, NBC or CBS or Netflix or Spotify or someone. I'm doing some of the production here in fucking house, and then I send it off to my guy to take care of. And in that process, we use some apps. You might notice the audio and video quality of this particular show is not at par with what I'm usually at. But I decided it was good content. So we're going to move forward with this motherfucker anyway. Enjoy the show.
But all of those experiences, I believe in life, they make you the person you are today.
Yep.
Right. I had to go hustle. If I wanted that pair of clothing, I had to go out and find a ways to become creative and get some entrepreneurial juices flowing to make the money, pull the money out of thin air. And those are skills that I still apply to. I'm still pulling money out of thin air today.
Welcome to another episode of 2000% Raise. I'm pumped up about today's guest, and it kind of makes me reflect because here I am on episode 48, 2 weeks away from that milestone 50th episode. And I was an interviewee on the Jay Maymi show about a year or so ago before I started doing all this shit. And Jay's one of the people that really encouraged me to go down this path, and my social media really kind of ramped up at that point, as well as obviously the 2000% Raise podcast being born. And, it's kind of just made me think. Consistency is the key. Consistency is what matters in the podcast world. You got to just keep out there. And when I look at my numbers, it was little. It's growing. It was growing. Oh, I got this guest coming. It's going to be a home run. It's going to be a grand slam. And they did okay numbers. And no one's going to know who this guest today is, and no one's going to watch it. But we talked about some real shit on that show, and those numbers were through the roof. So what's interesting is you build a following on your own. And today's guest is someone that's just done a great freaking job of that. And I look to him as somebody that's in this space. I look at his LinkedIn. I look at him working it on social media. I look at what he's doing with his radio show, how it's syndicated all over the country, and now it's on, internet radio as well. You could tune in anywhere you damn want. And it just makes me realize how easy it is to quit because there's so much damn competition in this space. So as I thought through that, I started thinking about, all right, where am I from a competitive standpoint? And if you're watching on YouTube right now, you're going to see that I'm wearing a Coach Cerasani t-shirt. And it was in memoriam of my father, who passed away back in 2018. He was the head football coach at Schaumburg High School for a span of over, I guess it would be technically 4 decades, but it's around 30 years or so that he had that position. And I was asked a couple years back during COVID, if I wanted to come talk to the team. And I presented the current team a scholarship in the name of my dad, and it was well received. And the head coach is the same person that took over for my dad 17 or so years ago. He pulls me aside because he reminded me of your dad up there. Convinces me somehow to become a volunteer coach at Schaumburg High School. Made all the sense in the world at the time. We didn't have shit to do during COVID. Hey, this is good for me. Let's go. I was at every practice and every game that first year. Well, life happens and things move forward, and I'm still involved now. Going on, I think, what is this, my third or fourth season now. And I get mad at myself because I'm not there as much as I would like to be because of everything else I got going. But he offered me at one point a paid position, which in high school football language, that's more important obviously than a voluntary position. And I said no, thank you. I appreciate it. And he goes, hey, what do you mean, man? Freaking 8 or 10 grand or whatever it pays is that's 8 or 10 grand. Like. Then I got to be there every day, bro. Then I got to be there and show up every day. I don't know if that's the move for me. I would feel terrible if you guys were paying me and I was taken away from the program with someone else that would, only do it for the money. So, it's been one of those things where I look back at my life and football did a lot for me. Okay. It got me into world-class universities that I wouldn't have had any business going to had it not been for athletics. I strived there. It gave me opportunities to be in the same room with some people that come from various backgrounds that parents did different things for a living than mine did. It took me out of my normal space and gave me those opportunities. So as I've become a grown man and I do different things in my life, I try to take that step back and say, okay, I should be giving back somehow. So my small way of doing that, anyone could donate money, and I do that shit too. All right. But my small way of trying to thank the universe for everything football has done for me, and also to keep my dad's name, in the forefront is to volunteer at Schaumburg High School. So I'm wearing this t-shirt, not just so I could tell that story. It's because as soon as we get off the call today, I am heading to football practice. It's our first day of practice. And my guest today will crack up to understand that, Jay Maymi, we do not have double sessions anymore. You're in Dallas where it's 190,000 degrees. It's only in the 80s here, my friend. We're still not allowed to have double sessions anymore. When I was at Northwestern, I played at Notre Dame and Northwestern. When I was at Northwestern University, and I'm not making light of this, but a gentleman, literally, a player literally passed away. His name was Rashidi Wheeler during a conditioning drill. And the school got sued, and there's a big thing around it. And look it up. The only thing that took that off the front page of the Chicago Tribune every day was 9/11 ended up happening. So that got knocked off the front page, but it's obviously a huge story and rest in peace. But you look at that now, and there's other circumstances surrounding that, and there's lawsuits and stuff on why he actually passed. But just the idea of going to double sessions in 110 degrees and wearing full pads and not allowed water breaks or being forced to keep running if you did something bad, it's just antiquated now. And it's like we're barbaric, you know what I mean? So none of this exists anymore in any football, especially youth football like high school. Jay Maymi was an athlete himself and it has re-emerged. That's not why we have him on the show today, but I will ask him about it. Was a professional bodybuilder and has now, in this later stage of his life, re-entered the sport. So I want to hear about that, Jay. But more importantly, Jay Maymi is a CEO, an entrepreneur maverick. He is a 9 times author. He's a national speaker, a sales psychology expert, which is really what draws me to you, Jay. I want to talk a bit about that. Radio talk show host, which I already talked about, and the world's #1 action tainer. So action tainer. I'm not sure that would, I think that would have the blue underline if I wrote it in Microsoft Word as spell check there.
Right.
Jay Maymi, welcome to 2000% Raise.
Hey, John, I appreciate having me on, man. I'm excited that we kind of thought about this, spoke about this quite a while ago when you came on the show, and here we are, man, ready to rock and roll. So let's go for it.
Pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. And not to lead with anything negative, but we could lead with something kind of funny. Should we tell this story real briefly on how we reconnected without?
Yes. No, go right ahead.
By the way, okay, everyone needs to be in business for the long game, not the short game. And I'm going to give you an example. All right, there's a PR firm running around on social media, and they're not the only ones doing this shit. Okay. And all they're freaking doing is buying paid placement ads, telling you they're going to get you press, and then upcharging the shit. And they have a professional looking presentation. You look at their Instagram, and they bought a bunch of followers. Everything looks good. All right. I worked with these guys for a month, and I'm like, these guys are so full of shit. And I was in a 6-month contract. I was in a 6-month contract, and I fired them. And you're not supposed to be able to do that. But I'm like, dude, however you guys want to handle it, you guys freaking are thieves. So moving on. So I had him for a month. All right. So fast forward, I don't know, probably 9-10 months later, out of a clear blue sky, Mr. Maymi, our guest here today, shoots me an email asking me, what I think about working with him because he's thinking about hiring him. Now, what the fuck are you talking about, Jay? Well, they've used you and your Instagram growth and everything you've been successful with as a case study in their promotional material. So me and Jay reconnected. I got on the phone with him, and usually I would just like, oh, figure it out for yourself, whatever. But this one pissed me off. So I got on the phone with him and told him exactly the case here. And we ended up talking a bit, and Jay was gracious enough to come on my show. So I appreciate that, my friend.
Hey, listen, I'm glad you gave me that life-saving advice, and it's interesting because the goal of some of these fake and phony organizations out there that can put your content in words in your mouth that you never said to promote their garbage. And I'm just so glad that I had the wisdom enough to ask them, give me references. And they only sent me 2. I know the other guy, he didn't do it. So, and of course, when I sent them a message, they never responded back, and I wiped my hands clean. But these are the jokers that are out there right now.
It's nuts, man. And if you're gonna play, I got advice for any con artists out there. If you're gonna play that game in this space, don't do it with like the higher profile people. If me and Jay considered ourselves high profile, just do it underneath with people that don't know any better, man. Because we know each other. We talk, okay?
Right.
I had someone reach out to me, Jay, that was name dropping Brad Lee. I don't know if you know who he is, but he has a pretty big podcast in Vegas and a good Instagram following. We're friends. So I shot him a message. Hey, so-and-so just told me he works with you. He goes, who? He goes, never heard of the guy. Brad's a little bit more popular. So he was like, this happens all the time. I go to fight. So
that's a reflection really of the times that we're in. We don't live in a time where fact-finding means anything, right? Fact-finding is a secondary thought, so people can get away with doing anything, saying anything. And that really goes a lot to not only just because we don't fact-find, but, we're just an academically lazy society right now that will give people the benefit of the doubt because we're too lazy to fact-find. And that's how you get suckered. Right? That's how these guys thrive because they know that most people aren't going to fact-find like you and I do.
You know what, man? And let's use that as a transition into something pretty relevant here. Sales psychology is listed as one of your one of the many verticals that you specialize in. Before we get into that, what that means itself, do you do training on this, Jay? What's your core work? I know you're at the level now where you're probably making money from your media stuff. You do national speaking. Is there something behind all of this that's leading to you as a coach or a trainer or anything like that?
That's a great question, John. I appreciate you asking. I actually went to school. My academic degrees is by a double major in psychology and consumer behavioral sciences. So, but more than that, that's the academic part. I started to sell when I was 13 years old in the trenches, just like you. You're a young guy trying to make a few bucks, right?
Yep.
So a lot of the stuff that I learned in the trenches of Spanish Harlem at 13 years old, trying to make enough money to buy the Nike sneakers and the Walkmans and all the stuff in the 80s that were pretty cool, the Jordache jeans. Right? All that cool stuff. We grew up poor. My parents were poor. We didn't have any money. I was adopted. Me and my brother were both adopted. My father worked 3 jobs. My mom had to stay home with us to take care of two twins they adopted, and plus my older sister. So, you couldn't ask my parents for money to buy the Nike sneakers, the Pumas, the Adidas, all that stuff. So we had to go out and figure out ways to make money legally. You can find a lot of ways in Spanish Harlem to make money legally as a teenager. Yeah. But all of that gave me the understanding on how to convince people to give you a break. Okay. So by the time I was 16, I started my first real career business because everything else I was just hustling for quarters and nickels and that kind of stuff. I taught myself how to do taxes, simple tax returns, 1099s, that kind of stuff. Back in those days, you can apply for the tax preparer's license with the IRS, take the test, you mail it in, they can give you certificates says you can do tax preparation. And it wasn't based on age. So I started doing that for the neighborhood. But the point is at that young of an age, I had to learn how to convince people that they can trust a 16-year-old to do their taxes, to do personal training when I was 18 years old. I had my own personal training business. And on and on and on. Then I became an actor. So all along the way, long before I learned that academically at Pace University, I had to learn how to convince people, persuade people, charm people authentically, right? Yep. to convince them to give me a chance to provide a service. So you combine that in the field trenches experience, which is valuable, plus the academic understanding how the brain works, how the mind works, what fascination, intrigue, mental triggers, decision triggers are that we all are wired to have. That kind of stuff makes you very unique in the marketplace. So sales psychology is not only because I learned it in the books, but I've applied it ever since. And that kind of creates a very unique situation there.
Wow. And, tell me a little bit more about your upbringing, because I'm always fascinated with people that, land on their feet in a way. And recently, just to give you an example, it's not always just about your childhood upbringing. It might be decisions that people made as adults that they've turned around. And I kind of felt guilty a little bit. There's this influencer online called, I always fuck his name up, Wes Wyatt or Wes Wyatt or something. Anyway, his whole thing is how he was in jail and now he comes out and does these masterminds. And if you watch the shit, you don't really understand what the fuck is actually selling. Just pay him 10 grand. Just pay him 10 grand.
Right.
So I made a reel kind of making fun of him, but hopefully he didn't see it because I'm gonna be looking over my fucking shoulder my whole life. I'm just bring it, motherfucker. Yeah. It's a problem nowadays, man. You can't just fight with your fists. You don't know what people are gonna show up with. But I felt bad making fun of him. Not that he cared. It was all in jest, anyways. But because it's like somebody like that was in the gutter, turned himself around, and now I'm kind of making fun of what he's doing and stuff. But like, it's good that, hey, you were there. Now that's an adult turning his life around, and no doubt he was an adult probably that made bad choices in the first place to put himself there as an adult. So it's like, the sympathy, it's a short leash on that sympathy there. But someone like you that was born into it, give us a little bit more of a background. And you said Spanish Harlem, all right, and you also said the 80s, and then you also said adopted. My first instinct there, Jay, was were you fortunate to be adopted versus living your life in foster homes? Was that something that worked in your favor? Could you give us a little bit about that background?
That's a very great question. I'll tell you why, because there's some things I've learned recently in the last 8 months. My mom passed away in this past November, a few days before Thanksgiving, from dementia.
Oh my.
And yeah, I now know what it is to see your parents deteriorate through dementia. But as a result of that, and just to kind of give it a trailer version, me and my brother reconnected with our adopted, our natural mother. Mm. And there's a whole soap opera history with my original parents. But my natural mother, just to answer your question about fortunate, we found out that had we stayed with her, she's in her 80s now, a great human being who's had a very difficult life. Mm. But, she had us when she was 21, 22. We would have been her fifth kids at 21. Yeah. And my siblings that I found out, one committed suicide at 21. The other one passed away of AIDS 2 years ago, who I've reconnected with, which is now my nephew in the Bronx.
You say he passed away from AIDS, did you say?
She passed away from AIDS. Yeah, she passed away from AIDS. And the other was in prison, just got out. And the other one lives at home because he's a crackhead. He's still struggling with addiction into his 60s. So this woman has dealt with tragedy her whole life. We would have been a part of that.
Yeah.
So the way that we became adopted is another story in itself. But am I grateful? Looking now that I know the history, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even though we grew up, meager means, it would have been far worse, I believe. And I wouldn't be the person, me and my brother would be the people that we are today. Yeah. We not been adopted.
That's nice that you give that credit there, man. And I kind of, man, nothing that dramatic, but, I grew up in a town called Schaumburg, and what I'm doing with my life's very different. Like some of my best friends, most people are just doing what people in Schaumburg did. They're living middle-class lives and whatever, and that's good. But there's some people that went the totally opposite direction I went and spent their lives in and out of jail. I got a couple of people I was friends with in high school that are, died of overdoses. you just look back sometimes and wonder, okay, is it because I had the parents that I had? You know what I mean? Because we're all from the same fucking place. How could this outcome be this and that outcome be that? You know what I mean? So it sounds like, that whole nature versus nurture argument. You're buying into the nurture side of that fully. It sounds like with that comment.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate the adoption more now in these last 8-9 months than I ever did before, because I didn't understand. I didn't know what I was saved from.
Yep.
Yep. And my parents, it's an amazing story, because when my parents went down to the adoption agency, they told the adoption, back then in those days in the 60s, I was born 1969. There wasn't as thorough background check as there is today. When you were adopting a child back then, you can go put your name on a list, show up, and there you go, right?
Yep. Yeah. So
when they showed up to to adopt, they didn't realize there were two. They were getting the buy one get one free deal, the BOGO. So they were poor, man. They could have said, "No, we'll take one."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But they said we could never separate these two. I mean, how do we separate twin brothers? And that's why the struggle was real financially, because my father had to go into the job. He had another mouth to feed.
Yeah.
And, but all of those experiences, I believe in life, they make you the person you are today.
Yep.
Right. I had to go hustle. I had to go at 13. If I wanted that pair of clothing, I had to go out and find a ways to become creative and get some entrepreneurial juices flowing to make the money, pull the money out of thin air, and those are skills that I still apply to. I'm still pulling money out of thin air today.
Yeah.
So,
we
don't have a salary. We don't have a salary.
Exactly. No shit. I haven't made any money in 3 years. The most money I made ever was when I told people I'm going to donate money on Venmo me on Instagram, and people, like 300 people, sent me $10, and I'm like, shit, that's the most money I ever made doing anything last 3 years.
Excuse me while I interrupt myself. Go to 2000percentraise.com and check out all the cool shit we got there, including our merchandise, including our upcoming events, and including our membership. That's a networking group you want to be a part of. Trust me, and it's not very fucking expensive. And did I mention it gives you super discounted access to our next event that's coming up October 12th and 13th? It's a mastermind in Las Vegas. 2000percentraise.com. Check it out.
You said something there that this is the shit that makes you you. It makes you who you are. And that's something, as I'm 46, and that's something I've kind of just asked myself over the years. Okay, when you look back, what would you really change? And yeah, there's some things like, I was married in my 20s, and I got her pregnant, and we decided to get married. And looking back now, that was stupid. We weren't in love. We shouldn't have got married. Why did I fucking do that? But also that painful 2.5 years for both of us of that marriage, maybe that made us who we are now a little bit too. You know what I mean? And we co-parent nicely together and stuff. And I just try to think of things that I know things that I would have done differently knowing what I know now.
Correct.
But do I wish I didn't do them? I don't know, because the aggregate is who I am, and I'm pretty happy in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, listen, it's funny. If anybody watches these Marvel movies now, if you're a fan of that stuff, you hear a lot about the multiverse, right? And different timelines, and how one timeline would have been created had you made a different decision, right? Yeah, okay. So you not choosing to marry because your girl got pregnant, right? That would have created a whole other separate timeline that may not have brought you to the person you are today, right? Yep. Same thing with me. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go with this. So at the end of the day, you've got to sit back and just say, what? I am where I am right now. I am who I am right now.
Yeah.
Because of all the decisions I'd made. Change one decision, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have met the kind of people, would have made the impact, would have had the influence.
Yeah.
Maybe I wouldn't be anywhere near my calling, my purpose. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the theater of life, right? Every decision you make creates a new play, a new act in that play. And here we are.
Yep. I think you nailed it there, brother. I think you nailed it. Okay, so let's tie this in then. I know you're an author and you're also an avid reader. I'm gonna assume, and we're talking about sales psychology. Let me, we talk about your background, how it led to the psychology of sales is where I'm trying to go with this whole thing. Let me ask you this: your number one book, besides your own, of course, Jay, your number one book in the sales / psychology of sales type of environment. I got one that immediately comes to mind for me, and I know you're going to love it, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, I would have to say that there's three. One is psychology. The other one's more about mindset. You have to have the mindset first in order to develop the desire to learn psychology. Okay. And it's it's old real estate guy, Tom, drawing his blank on his last name, but he's one of the first guys who sold real estate, made a big name for real estate. He's still around today. The Art of Selling.
Okay.
Great book. It was more geared towards real estate because that's how my first exposure was real estate. Okay. And it's funny, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but I could see his face. He's like almost 80 years old, been around all that time.
Yep.
Actually, the book was Act Like a Lamb, Sell Like a Lion. Ooh, I like it. Okay. Act Like a Lamb, Sell Like a Lion. That's the bestseller. I read that back in the 80s.
Okay.
And then, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, the classic book that you read. Okay. And then there's this an actual book of psychology called The Psychology of Selling. Okay. And that is a number one classic bestseller. That's been around for a bit. The guy who wrote the book, the name escapes me, but he is a professor. He still teaches today. And I think he actually taught at Northwestern, or that might have been one of his stints. And he teaches the psychology of sales and persuasion selling. He's the number one subject matter expert in the industry. So I read his book, but it's interesting because I read his book years after I was already doing it naturally. And the concepts and what he was teaching just affirmed to me, hey, I'm on the right track. What he's talking about from an academic standpoint is the stuff I do now already with all sorts of different techniques and things that you can do to trigger decisions in people's mind, and, how to use body language to get people to resonate with you, to comply with your requests. Really clever stuff. So those are the three: two mindset, and then one that's an actually academically based book on psychology called The Psychology of Selling.
Awesome. Mine is you didn't go there because mine's not really a sales book, man. Mine's a life book. I actually read it when I was kind of in a downtime of my life, and I go, hey, I got to learn how to just kind of fucking turn this thing around. I read it in my 20s. It's called Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, sure, it's a classic.
Classic. Yeah. I reflect. I have like 10 copies in my office at all times. If somebody comes over that I think could use one, I give them a copy. If they haven't read it, I go, you need to read this. If I think that they're ready for it, number one. Number two, if I think they'll actually fucking read it, I'm not going to run around giving people this damn. The people I do give it to, though, usually it's meaningful. I'm giving it to them for a reason, and they appreciate it. And lo and behold, like clockwork, 3 weeks later, I get a call. Thank you so much. You know what I mean? So I really enjoy that one. And you just nailed it with Napoleon Hill. I think that's on everybody's list for sure, right?
When I was growing up and started to get into books, you just follow what other people do. And that's one of the things I coach and I talk to people about today. Success there could be some new creative ways to become successful today in terms of a product or service. But the underlying way to get there has already been, revealed by those 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, right?
Yep.
It's in the books. And, Think and Grow Rich is one of them. How to Influence People is another one.
Right.
The secrets have been revealed already on how to be successful in the art of communication and persuasion. So there's no reason to reinvent that.
So let me ask you something, man. Are you, so all this stuff you're doing ultimately, a lot of times people will have podcasts because really they're trying to market themselves for some kind of business behind that. Why are you doing all this, Jay? Is it to get speaking engagements? What's your real purpose here?
I got to give you the trailer version of that answer.
You got it.
It's a long answer, right?
Okay.
And I think that has a lot to do with what I think people skip over in their lives because they don't slow down and think. And that is to recognize what's my purpose. Why am I here? And there's a a very popular Instagram post. It's in one of my books that I talk about, your calling reveals your purpose. Rather, your gifts reveal your calling. Your calling is what fuels your purpose. So I recognized a few years ago what my gifts were. Gifts are something you don't have to work hard at. Like I'm not gifted to throw a 95 mile an hour baseball, right? That's not my gifts. That's why I'm not supposed to be a pitcher of baseball, right? Yep. If my gifts weren't the gifts of persuasion and communication, I'm not supposed to be a speaker, right? Yeah. I've never taken a writing course ever, yet I'm on my 10th book now, and it's every person who reviews this says this is a fantastic writing. Some of it is niche, but those are my gifts. So when I recognized what my gifts were, I said, okay, I know what my calling is, and my calling is to inspire people, to impact people, to influence people, to instruct people, right? For their good and the good of the world, right? Yep. So how many ways can I do that? That's my highway of life. Inspire, impact, influence, improve the lives of others. Okay, awesome. So how many lanes on that highway can I create that can deliver that calling? Well, radio, books, coaching, speaking, podcasts, whatever. Yep. If those are avenues that I can create that continue to fulfill what I know my calling is, then I'm going to do it. So that's what motivates me. You take a fish out of water, you put him on a dry deck, he's going to flap around. He's going to, because he knows I'm not supposed to be here, right? Right. I'm supposed to be in the water. Yeah. You take me out of those highways, you take me out of that calling, I'm going to flap around. I'm going to say, hey, I'm not supposed to be out of this calling. I'm going to flap around looking for that water. That's what I think people miss out on. What is that calling? And once you figure that out, then you could say, okay, am I going to make this calling am I going to pursue, this is the key. I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. Am I going to pursue this calling for financial gain or for fulfillment? Because not every calling needs to be pursued for financial gain. Right. Especially if you're not wired to be business-minded and entrepreneurial skills. If you don't have that, then your calling is for fulfillment, for impact. Okay. You're very fortunate, and this is where I consider myself fortunate, because I've been able to merge my calling where I can create it for financial gain and for fulfillment and impact. Right. Yeah. That's why I do what I do.
Well, okay. And so with that, Jay, are you, did you find that early on, that balancing act, right? Where, well, just in terms of the monetization of what this is, you know what I mean? And okay, you got to charge people. Okay. Well, I want to help you. I got to pay my bills too. Like finding that balance, was that ever difficult for you?
It was in the beginning because you're young, right? So you're chasing money. But it's like chasing money without a real strong purpose. You're empty. So if that doesn't make me money, I'll try something else that makes me money. Okay. Run around. Kind of like with women, right? Right. You date this girl because for the moment she floats my boat, right? Yep. But does she really, is there a real connection there? No. So once the floating the boat is over, you're on to the next one. Right? Yep. Yeah, and that's how you get into trouble. Right? So it's only when you really get to know yourself. Yep. That's when you can you find someone that you find a connection with, because you know what you want, you know what you don't want, you know what really makes you happy. So in business, you're young, you're chasing money, but you don't really find which is the actual opportunity that, you make money at, but you also feel good. You can see yourself doing it, even if you never made a nickel. If what I do now, John, if I never made a nickel, I would still do it. If I won the lotto tomorrow, I would still do what I do.
Awesome.
Because I enjoy it, Yeah. It takes a long time to get to that point, though, and I think a lot of people never get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, the adage, if you find something you really love doing, you're never going to work a day in your life, right?
Exactly. And by the way, when you find that, because you recognize you've arrived at acknowledging and identifying the calling. Yeah. What were you called to do?
Yeah. I got to tell you, man, I was so what's the word I'm looking for? I was just so into myself, There's a better word for it than that. But while I was growing my business, I was not looking at the bigger picture. Now anyone that knows me I wasn't selfish. I was, I'm a very good father. My friends and family, I go out of my way for people like that all the time. And I've always been that way. But my mission in life was my company, building my company. And then I sold it to private equity. Okay, well, shit, this is the last 15 years of your life. Well, what are you going to do now? Mm-hmm. And I struggled with finding out what that purpose is because, your ego gets in the way a little bit too. Okay, well, what am I going to do now? I'm not really relevant. The rest of the world moves on without me. And then COVID hits during this time too, Jay. So it's I would never say I was very lonely. I always had friends around me and stuff like that. But I really did struggle with what I'm going to do next. And people like you, I truly mean this, Jay, helped me, find what that ground is. And, I do this shit on social media talking about forget corporate America, start your own business. And I do it in an entertaining way. And some people find it a bit, crass or, whatever. And here's what I learned though, man, like those people that I'm offending on the way, they're not the ones that matter because no matter how nicely I give the message that I really believe in, no matter how nicely I say it, they're not going to be impacted by it anyway. And me having the style that I have with yelling and saying, oh, your boss is going to screw you over. Don't be loyal to corporate America. Work for yourself. There are people that need to hear that message. And unfortunately, the way it works with social media is if I'm not yelling and doing it in an entertaining way, it's not going to get very many freaking views. So I just made that realization because really for me, it's not necessarily me to act like that. People that know me think I'm like humble and shit for the most part. Dude, who is this guy on social media? I go, listen, it's not an act. I believe every word I'm saying, but I got to kind of lean into it a little bit because I think my purpose at this point is to encourage people that are capable of it to explore being a business owner on their own. And I think that's what I'm here for. I think that me quitting my job in corporate America when I was 27 on the fast track to be in management one day at a big company, publicly traded company with 20,000 employees, and just saying, screw this, I could do this on my own. When everyone was telling me I can't, hey, here's how it worked for me. Here's how it might work for you too. Look into it. And I get DM after DM, Jay, and it's just made me feel so damn good about it. Everything I'm doing now, I don't think I haven't found the balancing act of monetization along with this quite yet. But luckily I'm in a pretty nice financial position from selling my company where that's not really a priority. But you speak to what your calling is, and gosh, man, God bless you for how long you've been doing this for.
Since 1992.
Dude, think about it, man. I'm 46 and I'm just figuring this out now. You were what your lower 30s, or wait, you were in your 20s. 92, shit. 92. You're a young man.
Yeah, I'm a very young man, brother. I'm very young man. Now it's interesting. So since 1992 has been I've been experiencing this entrepreneurial chase, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't up until 5 years ago that it hit me like a ton of bricks. When I peeled back the curtain, I said, oh, so for all those years, here's why everything that I've chased has always been in the pursuit of improving, inspiring others. I used to be in entertainment, but it still was the same thing. That's who I am. I'm that person. That's why the number one action trainer, we were talking about that earlier. You mentioned that.
Yep.
I looked at that. I see, my whole life through one entertainment form, through this humor, through his book, through whatever it is, it's been training someone. It's been giving someone a chance to get the knowledge so they could take the right action. But I've done it in a way that's entertaining.
Yep.
So that's an action tainer, right? Entertaining people to take action.
Yep.
Or in an entertaining way, giving people the encouragement to take action, the resources, to take action. So that's that's a Maymiism. That's a Maymiism.
A Maymiism. I was about to say you never took a writing course, and I'm no English PhD over here. So if somebody wants to say when you combine two words like that, entertainer and action, what there has to be some kind of there's a word for that combination. I don't know what it is, but
There is a word for that. Yes, when I was just reading about that, there's a word. Now, hopefully down the road that becomes a popular, phrase, but I coined it first, so I own it, brother.
There you go. Exactly. Put that trademark next to it, man. Put that trademark next. Well, listen, man, there's a few other things I wanted to talk about, but we're running out of time here. I really appreciate this, Jay. This was awesome. Like I said, we're approaching our 50th episode here, and I'm getting at that point now where these next 50 episodes, I want to bring back some people that were great interviewees that I think we have, more to talk about. So I'd love to put you in that 51 to 100 slot at some point.
I love it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let me give you one quick thing, because you said something earlier. I know we're running out of time, but on my head, you started saying you get your 48th episode, and now you're talking about the next 50. There's a quick takeaway that I'll give you and anyone else who's listening, because this matters not only if you're creating your own brand in a very crowded space like podcasting or anything else that's crowded. Number one, I would always say, make sure that you consistently, and I call the 3 C's, consistently create content. But consistently means that on a regular basis, not every 4, 5, 6 months, and content of value. So consistent contact. And then the third is, don't fall into the trap of comparison. Don't compare your message, your show, your style to somebody else who's having lots of success. I've made those mistakes. Don't compare that. I don't have a great guest. This other podcaster always has great guests.
Yep.
People are not impressed with guests anymore. They're impressed with the content that the guest, wherever you have, delivers and how it affects and resonates in their life. You could have a celebrity on your show who has a very bland, mediocre message. Get somebody who is unknown, and that listener will resonate more with the unknown person than the celebrity. Don't get caught in that comparison trap.
Brother, I can't thank you enough for saying that. I've been in so many situations where that's exactly what happens. And I got to tell you, it gets even a little more annoying. I'm sure you know this shit. We talked about those, so the PR people juking things on social media. Everyone's so freaking full of shit in this space, dude. It's like, oh, his podcast is in the top 10 or whatever. It's like, listen, this is all it's sucking and jiving. It's listen, all this crap. You could go on these websites, buy bots to view your shit. Screw that, man. Okay, what's the actual freaking content? And I got to tell you, Jay, every once in a while, I'll put up an Instagram reel that I know is good content, and it might not have the views that some of my other ones get. I don't take that motherfucker down. I leave it up there because the right people are going to come across that.
That's right.
Oh, shit, I just learned something from that.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Listen, if your video, your content helps one person, then that's the only person who's supposed to help. Roll on to the next one. Okay. Hey, can I plug my next book real quick before we go? You got to go. So, this book will come out pretty soon. It's actually August 15th is the official pre-ordering date, but the 10 toxic traits that keep you broke, busted, and disgusted is my 10th book, 10 toxic traits. It's a funny book, but it's an in-your-face, Jay Maymi style book that leaves you thinking, am I getting in my own way? Do I struggle with any one of these traits? We all do, right? To an extent or another. But like narcissism, pride, procrastination, being disorganized. It's a great book that's going to hit somebody right between the eyes, and it's going to give them a reason to reconsider what they need to change in order to get out of their own way, and stop being their own problem. Okay. If success is important, 10 toxic traits that keep you broke, busted, and disgusted. It'll be on Amazon August 15th for pre-ordering, official release September 15th.
And that's coming. This is going to be airing that week, buddy. So that works in circle. And putting this out.
Awesome.
Jay, I'm not broke, busted, or disgusted, but I am often accused of being a narcissist. So.
Oh, by the way, broke, busted, disgusted, and I read the book, not necessarily financial. It could be, you're demoralized, your spirit is down, your demeanor is down, you're discouraged, you're depressed, right? Financially, you could be broke, busted, disgusted too. But even those who have money, sometimes they're broke, busted, and disgusted because they can't get out of their own way based on these traits. So you're saying narcissist.
Well, let me ask you something. Jay, I don't know how much you do on Instagram and stuff, but the new thing, not the new thing, it's been around, but people like that think they're like, I don't know, they're cute. Like they'll they say the word cringe. Oh, that was cringy. Or they'll do the clown face. Another one I see pop up is, you're such a narcissist. You're such a narcissist.
Yeah.
And then you go look at the person's page and it's a bunch of selfies of themselves in a mirror. It's like, I'm a narcissist.
Right.
What the hell, bro? What the hell? So,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
People pick up a dictionary one day and they're like, oh, I'm going to use this word today, you know?
Well, it's the buzzword. They use buzzwords.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is using them, you know?
Yeah.
But that's all part of the fake phony social media world that we live in. You know?
Yeah.
But this is the world that we live in right now.
But think about it. 2 years ago, who was running around calling people narcissists? You had to be somewhat intelligent to kind of in the know what that means. Now everyone's just running, you're a narcissist. Maybe I just hear it all the time because I'm what things like. Dude, is everyone saying this? I haven't heard that. That's weird. Oh, shit. Well, Jay, we end every episode with this last question, man.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be about anything we talked about, brother. Just something that you'd like our audience to know. Jay Maymi recommends what movie to the 2000% Raise audience?
We're talking about all-time classic. I mean, Shawshank Redemption is a great film.
Okay.
That's a great film, you know? And so it all depends on what era we're talking about here, because I can go way back. But this year, Mission Impossible is the best film I've seen so far.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah, you're the first Mission Impossible guy. We have had Shawshank Redemption mentioned before, and that is a great movie. Jay Maymi, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up another episode of 2000% Raise. Thank you for listening. The best way to support our show is by leaving a rating or review on all platforms you listened on. And of course, by following, liking, or subscribing. Visit us at 2000percentraise.com or at John Cerasani on TikTok and Instagram. And of course, my YouTube channel at John Cerasani's 2000% Raise. Find all the ways to follow today's guests in our show notes. Thank you for being a part of our entrepreneurial journey.